Welcome, everybody. My name is Brad Pringer. I lead our partnerships team at InfoTrust. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, Advanced Functionalities and Integrations with Google Marketing's platform, specifically in the retail space. Before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit of humor to get everybody going today. We know it's the afternoon, so make sure we're making this a very engaging. This is the second part of our three-part series. Our first one was in CPG. This one's focused on retail, and we're going to finish up the day in news and media. So the comic here, I came across it last week, and I thought it was really relevant for the conversation today, because we're going to talk a lot about advanced analytics and how we see top retailers who are our partners doing a really good job in it. And Michael's going to leave us with some actionable takeaways so you can go back to your organization and really bring that across your team and set up the right process. Get the right people in place and to get from point A to point B much faster. So I thought this was funny because we can talk a lot about big data and cloud and advanced analytics, but if you don't have the strategy and you haven't worked across your organization to understand why are we doing this, who are our customers, then you may be finding that the insights that you're making decisions off of aren't accurate. So I know you're going to talk a lot about that today. So let's get into intros. My name again is Brad Pringer. I lead our partnerships team. I am typically the first interaction of a potential new partner to really understand what are their objectives, what are they looking for, where they potentially need to bring in our team to advance their own capabilities and, again, move along their analytics framework faster. When I'm not doing this day job that I love, I have 3 lovely kids, and they keep me plenty busy. So, Michael, over to you.
Great. Brad, thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to participate in this series and talk a bit about retail and e-commerce sector. I lead the retail strategy for InfoTrust, and what this entails is meeting with a lot of our e-commerce partners, omnichannel marketers, and really helping them determine how digital analytics can add value to their business and how it can help them grow. It seems like something that we take for granted, but a lot of times it's actually just taking the data and turning it into something valuable. I apologize, we are having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, sorry everybody. We literally had a plant drop over. That's why hopefully you're with us and you're not working or checking email. The reason we're doing this interactive is so it's very engaging and front and center. This isn't scripted. We wanted to make this a really actionable webinar for you. And just to give everybody the view of what we have, we're looking at a window here, and we had a palm tree fall on part of our marketing team. So that's why Michael lost it a little bit.
Thank you, Brad.
In this. So thank you, Michael. We're excited about having you join us. To give a little bit, before I talk about InfoTrust, about how we're going to work today is we're going to have a fireside chat with Michael, who again is working with some of the largest retailers across the globe. Retail is a big vertical for us. It's where we play, CPG, news and media. But today we're focused on what are the top retailers doing? What are those advanced use cases, specifically around Google Analytics 360, Google's cloud environment, BigQuery. And I'm really excited about what we can get out of here, but your questions are going to be very important. Let's utilize Michael's time, our team's time, to make sure that you're getting the questions that you're asking internally right now, that you're talking with your team about. So again, the questions are going to make this an even better experience. We're not hiding behind slides. We're trying to break the mold of a traditional webinar where you're listening to slides, you're multitasking and doing 10 other things. So be engaged with us, and we hope this is a really productive discussion. So a little bit about those of you who have not heard of InfoTrust. I saw that we have over 100 attendees today, so thank you for joining. I see some partners that have joined. Thank you for your partnership, and also some potential new partners. So thank you for joining. Please ask questions. But InfoTrust, a little bit about us. We're an end-to-end analytics company. Our focus is helping organizations understand the ROI. So we're not media sellers. We work a lot within media, but we really focus on how do we drive the return on investment for organizations. And it's in really 3 key categories. Number 1 is the data architecture and data governance. So making sure, especially in today's world of compliance and privacy, and I know for those in the US, CCPA is coming next year. You have GDPR that was already well in place, but organizations still struggling. So again, that first part, as you think about the analytics maturity framework, it's making sure that your data and your infrastructure is set up correctly so you can get good data, make good decisions, be compliant with that data, make sure your site, especially in retail, is operating as fast as it can from a site speed. Number two is platform integration and business insights. We're going to talk about some of those advanced use cases of how you as a retailer can take multiple different platforms and make them integrate well with one another to drive more actionable insights, both and more importantly, connect analytics to what you're doing on the marketing side. So we talk about silos as you have a marketing team, you have an analytics team. A lot of times they're working in their own silos. The goal is to bridge that together and find those customers and make them most actionable. And the final is even more advanced, is that more data science side of things. So I can mention a lot of buzzwords to you right now, but really is taking those advanced analytics and getting that single view of the customer so you can make business decisions off of those. And finally, we are going to be a little bit focused on Google today. We're one of Google's longest standing certified analytic partners. So we have the ability to sell Analytics 360. We also work a ton within the Google Analytics space, but we work across all platforms. So excited about what we can share today. And with that, we're going to jump into the fireside chat. So thank you, Michael, for joining us today. We do have a digital fire. We hope you enjoy it. But I wanted to start off talking a little bit about something I mentioned earlier around the maturity analytics framework. And this is the only slide we're going to share with you during this part, because I want it to be really engaging. And after this section, we're going to have a live Q&A. So typically you wait till the end of a webinar and you ask questions. We want to make sure that you can ask the questions right now, as we're going to be talking about some really key big areas that I think all of you can relate to and understand in your own organization. So on the screen here, we have an analytics maturity framework that Google really partnered with a company to put this together to help organizations understand where they're at. And I think that's step one as we talk with any new partner or current partners. You have to make an honest assessment where your organization's at today. And I strongly encourage you to think about where you're at today, but where do you want to be a year from now? Because you need to put those actionable steps together to get from a nascent to a multi-moment, or an emerging to a multi-moment. So to talk a little bit about nascent over to multi-moment, please take a moment to read through these, but essentially it's nascent is you're not really using analytics, you're using very, very basic metrics, you're using last click attribution, you're not doing a ton to really advance the analytics and how you reach your customers. Emerging is you're starting to understand the importance, your leadership, you have some leadership on board, you're starting to use analytics, you're looking at mostly third-party data, so you're not really putting action to your first-party data, making it actionable to reach customers. Connected is where you really start to understand and have a POV of that customer. How do I more effectively reach that customer? How do I take our silos of information so I can reach my primary customer and go focus on them? And then multi-moment. Multi-moment is what we would call some of our partners best in class. They're utilizing analytics. It's embedded in their ecosystem. Marketing and analytics are working together. They have regular weekly calls, and they're working together.
And one thing, if I might call out, when we look at this chart, initially, especially when we're in the meetings with executives, you always want to demonstrate that you're already a multi-moment, or you have parts of being a multi-moment organization. It really is not about where you are right now in your journey. Certainly, it's very important to know where you stand, but the question that we always advise organizations to think about is, what is my velocity of moving from one stage to another? And if you're already a multi-moment and an advertiser, that's fantastic, but how fast are you able to leverage data into marketing insights? This is where a number of organizations often struggle, is it feels like we sit on a lot of high quality data, but either due to how organizational silos or due to the technical debt that we have that we are not able to address, it takes us a while to actually leverage insights. Yesterday I was in LA and I was stuck in traffic, so I had plenty of time to listen to podcasts. And there was a podcast from Recode, Decode, where Kara Swisher was interviewing the CEO of Delta, Ed Bastian, and he also mentioned something very interesting. Obviously, Delta is in an e-commerce website. Certainly, they are not a retailer by definition, but an e-commerce website. And he was mentioning that they have a lot of customer data, a lot of plain data, engine data to work on efficiencies, but a lot of times they are not quite sure what additional data is going to give them in terms of making their business more profitable. So that's something that clearly many organizations are thinking about is, again, where do we stand right now, but investment into analytics, what additional value it will bring us as a business. That's really what we want to be focusing on and thinking again about what is our path from one stage to another.
Thanks, Michael. It's super helpful. I'm curious to get your point of view, and I think the audience would appreciate is you work with some of the top retailers around their digital strategy and analytics and kind of manage the team here. Where are some of the areas specifically as it relates to retail where you see retailers struggle? So I know there's best in class examples, but sure. I think there's also a certain point of this where it becomes complicated. Could you share a little bit more about what you experienced firsthand with retailers?
Yes, so there's more of a conceptual or business answer to this, and then one that is more specific to analytics. I think where a lot of retailers, and I would say generally businesses that are struggling with analytics, is not having the right framework on how we consistently take our data, form some kind of marketing hypothesis with the data, and then set up a test or experiment to validate our learnings. We all want to be the type of company that Harvard Business Review writes a case study about. What we fail to consider is that even those organizations that become those case studies, that many of them have failed more than once before they've done something that was a case study worth. So I think that type of structured approach to putting digital analytics to good use is very, very important. The other one is just inadequate access to resources, either internally or externally. A lot of this work does not require having 50 people on your team, but you still need to have the right resources who are well trained and understand your business, understand what needs to happen on the analytical and the technical side, and then can bring those two together. I feel that this is a lot of times a problem is not having a dedicated product owner, product manager for these types of initiatives, somebody who's actually responsible for taking advantage of your analytics. Many organizations are very much keen on building their own data warehouse, building their data capabilities, but once that is accomplished, how do we actually demonstrate the value of what we've built? And that's where we need to be spending a lot of time on.
It's interesting you say that. With my background being pretty heavy on the media side of our space, what I found is you would have, a marketing side that is doing these really innovative campaigns and programs. Then you would have the analytics side that's doing these really, data lakes sure. and everything that you were mentioning, but they're not connecting one another together. So when you talk with them in isolation, it seems like, yeah, we're doing a great job. But when you say, what's the single view of your customer look like? Or how's that customer engaging with all of your partners? Sometimes that's a disconnect. But even to take it a step further is something you mentioned is the people and process. So even if you are getting really good data and you feel like your organization, you have that really rich data set on who your most profitable customers are, sometimes the pace at which you can move is not fast enough to actually impact before another change or another dynamic comes into the retailer space.
Well, another example that I can give, since I already alluded to my recent LA trip, while there I was meeting with an advertiser, certainly I'm not going to disclose their name on the webinar, but what was interesting about them, I was meeting with their data team, right? Not the marketing team, but the data team responsible for building this type of data lake, data warehouse. And the question came out, we are building this centralized repository of analytics, but marketing is not necessarily using all of that information, right? What can we change? And so my response to that was, well, how's the effectiveness of your marketing team measured? I then said, well, we have somebody, let's say, who's responsible for Facebook, and hence their success measured by how well Facebook is performing. Right? So if you're somebody who runs a Facebook advertising campaigns and you're merely measured on the effectiveness of those Facebook ads, you can easily make an argument that you do not need access to data lake. All you need are Facebook reports, and you need to be able to demonstrate how Facebook campaigns are performing week over week, right? So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So we need to clarify that, simply an improvement by channel is not really not just what the organization is after. Certainly, we want to be more effective on Facebook, Instagram, whatever your medium is, or one of the many mediums that you have. But we also just need to be better as an integrated marketer. And this is where the reliance on data warehouse and access to central customer view is so important.
Oh, and first of all, thank you. So Michael did just come from a red eye, and then a palm tree falls in the beginning of our presentation.
There goes my concentration.
Thank you. He's going to never forgive me for scheduling a webinar after the red eye, although I think you may have scheduled the red eye after this was planned. So maybe some scheduling issues on Michael's end here. But I'd like to understand, it seems like a very basic question, but me being on the front lines of a lot of these conversations, I find a lot of retailers, regardless of the size, are still struggling to actually, how do they measure it? Like, how do you measure this data? What would you say if I'm a retailer and I'm just struggling, like, how do I take all this data that I have and how do I start to measure that? What would you say? What advice would you give?
Sure. So I think we need to understand what is the overall value of analytics. Right? So if you invest in data, say digital data, the first question is, how do we make money with this asset, right? And there are two ways to do so. One is you increase overall revenue, right? Yep. So you're able to make a case that, look, by investing in analytics, for every advertising dollar that we currently spend on marketing, we are going to be able to increase our sales by 1 to whatever %. Yep. And in that case, well, the way you defend your budget is by documenting what the current campaigns are able to accomplish for your business, and then making a case that, again, by investing in analytics, either through smarter retargeting or through better understanding how product correlation might work and what products you want to promote to what groups of people, you are going to be able to increase revenue without, again, increasing your ad spend. So that's one. The other one is, can we use analytics to actually lower our advertising budget or make our advertising more effective, more efficient, right? And in that case, the point might be, look, our analytics have demonstrated that something as simple as our checkout funnel on a website is not efficient, right? That our drop-off rate is very high, and we need to spend a considerable amount of effort to streamline our e-commerce or checkout experience. And with such, we are going to be able to generate more conversions. So hence, your budget might stay the same, but you increase your revenue, or you might even say, look, we are going to remove some of the advertising campaigns in lieu of simply increasing the conversions on our website, right? So we can accomplish more with less. Attribution modeling or media mixed modeling is a prime example of us determining which campaigns are not effective, right? Which campaigns do not actually generate value, and we either need to refocus them or we can remove them without impacting our marketing ROI. So that's kind of how we think about analytics. The last one is probably determining the efficiency of your team, right? So if somebody on your marketing team says, well, I'm not able to run certain campaigns and I have to wait for a week before I get access to my data, that's a problem, right? So the efficiency is not quite there. A case should be made that your organization will be running faster, and hence many of these campaigns will be executed faster. You'll be able to learn faster by changing how people have access to accurate information. That's another real measure of your analytics.
Helpful. So what about retailers? I really put them in two buckets. There's one that they're just natively online. All of their transactions, e-commerce, everything's happening online. I think most people would argue that's a little bit easier than more of an omni-channel retailer that maybe grew up in a legacy where people had to go into the store, and now they're trying to catch up with maybe some of the smaller, nimble, faster startup organizations. So thinking about the omni-channel retailer, given a lot of our partners are omni-channel, and have those retail brick and mortar locations, how would you think maybe differently, or maybe some different considerations for that group?
So, well, let's start with what is the same, right, among those groups, because I think we are very fast to say, well, as an omni-channel retailer, we have a lot of legacy systems. It's not easy for us to integrate our point of sale that was launched, in 2000 when there was an internet bubble, right? Yes, of course, that is a real concern. But at the end of the day, it comes down to customer experience and be able to create an amazing customer experience. And I would say that in many cases, being an omni-channel retailer, you have more of those touch points, right? To have that memorable experience. So yesterday, while in Santa Monica, I was walking around and I saw an Allbirds store. Allbirds, they make those wool sneakers that are very popular and certainly very popular in our office, as many people, including myself, enjoy wearing them. And Allbirds, by every definition, is sort of this new wave of a market or a retailer, right? And they were started not too long ago. They probably don't have that many legacy systems, and stores very much came after websites have been developed. But as you walk into the store, right, you kind of, one, as the store is designed and the atmosphere is very much feels natural, right? Kind of what I would expect from a brand like Allbirds. I was wearing my Allbirds as I walked into the store. They immediately greeted me. They recognized the model. They suggested another model that is new that I might be interested in, right? So it's very much about how do we tie those interactions together, right? Possibly if they spend a few more minutes at the store, they ask for my name, they look me up in the CRM, they can see my past purchases, they can immediately recommend the size, and then they might say, you know what, most likely we know that you don't live in Santa Monica, so if you buy this pair of shoes right now, they're just going to send them directly to your home, right? And here they connect, again, that offline experience with an online, if you will, making it work seamlessly. So I think that's the key thing to remember, is that we really need to pay attention to the overall omni-channel experience and how through all of these different touch points, whether it's a website, mobile application, pop-up store, or an actual store, we are able to deliver on that experience better. Talking about the differences, so I think the biggest difference when we talk about omni-channel and online is, again, the omni-channel retailers, they have a lot of legacy systems, right? They kind of built digital on top of what was already done. And at some point, that integration between platforms will need to happen. So we have to determine how do we address our technical debt, because if our technologists are not supporting of this seamless customer experience, we are going to struggle as an organization, right? When I meet with a retailer, regardless if it's an online or omni-channel one, and they tell me they have multiple CRMs. One is they have a loyalty program, which is different from their CRM, and they have a different CRM system for their in-store customers versus online customers. That's really a point of failure in terms of how difficult do you think it would be to create a seamless experience for the customer, and how easy it would be for you to overspend on advertising because you only see parts of how I interact with your brand versus the whole thing. The other item to keep in mind, as we talk about re-platforming or addressing the technical, that even online retailers will have to do this, right? Just because we came on the market over the past, let's say, 10, 15, or 20 years, some of the technologies that we might have, we might need to grow out of. We might need to scale to other platforms as our businesses grow. So that's just something that I think every organization needs to be very mindful of, is if we are lucky to design this from the ground up, how do we make sure that the platforms scale in the easiest possible way? And if that's something that we currently do not have, what do we need to do to get to that point?
And just, if I may, another example. So your Allbirds experience, we are not sponsored by Allbirds. Allbirds is not a partner. We love for them to be a partner, but regardless of, Allbirds, if I just think about my recent experience, I was out to dinner with my wife, had a fantastic meal, and this large big box retailer we shop at online pretty frequently. But it happened to be right next to a dinner spot. We had some stuff to get, so we went into this big box retailer and we had a horrible experience. So they had very minimal people working the checkout. I think we waited 25 minutes in line. We had to get some like soccer stuff for my oldest daughter. And we literally waited 20, 25 minutes. The environment was very different than the online. So I think it plays back to what we were saying earlier, is you think about marketing analytics and the separation there. I think where omnichannel, where I see certain organizations struggle, is the retail brick and mortar team is separate than their online team. So the online team's doing all this amazing stuff, personalization, you feel like a really good customer, and then you walk in the store and you don't have that same experience, which me turns off, and I would say that we'll probably shop there less online. So I think it just has a dramatic impact on both, which leads me into an article I read a couple weeks ago at the Wall Street Journal. Is in 2019, store closures have skyrocketed in the first half of 2019. I don't think that's any surprise. I think there's a lot of pressure in retail. I think especially as we approach the holidays and go into code freeze. I would just love to hear maybe your point of view as we read about some of those major headlines, why you think that's happening. Why are these organizations not just picking up and learning the process and moving quickly to win?
Sure. So let me start maybe with a suggestion or with a thought, right? So imagine, and it's easy for me to say, imagine that somebody is coming to US who's never been here before. I certainly was in this position not too long ago, right, when I first moved to the States. So imagine somebody comes and you see them, right, and they ask you, you know what, Brad, recently I read about the story. I want to pick at companies that are currently going through a hard time, but whether it's Payless Shoes or Sears or Gymboree or some of the others that you mentioned. And the question is, I've read about the store. Why would I shop there, right? Or tell me, what is so special about it? How would you answer that question?
Based on the retailers that you mentioned, I would say there's nothing that stands out to me of why I would shop there, or why I would go there.
And those, I'm sure, are great retailers, and they have a cult following, right? Or some people that are very much keen on buying from those stores. But that's, I think, the number one problem that we need to fix, right? It's not an analytics problem, right? Data is not really going to help fix this, right? Yes, we can leverage analytics to optimize your checkout funnel, but if people do not quite understand why they should be shopping on one of the websites versus going to, let's say, companies like Target that are doing well, Nordstrom, Amazon, and certainly others, we are not really going to be able to leverage media mix modeling or e-commerce optimization or A/B testing to make a dent and to change that. So I think that's the main thing that we need to remember is certainly Amazon made it very competitive, right? We can say difficult, but very competitive in the retail space. And we tend to think, why we should shop on Amazon? Well, because it's convenient, right? Even if certain things might be a little bit more expensive or a lot more expensive. I have not done the comparison, but it's one click, right? It's extremely easy to find things. It just works. It remembers what you purchased before, right? There are other stores. Recently, just for the sake of preparation for this, I went to Barneys.com. Barneys.com, a great retailer, right? By many standards, considered to be, one of the most well-known retailers in the United States. And as I was looking on their online website, even the sorting was just not easy in terms of how I should be looking at products. Filtering was complex, right? I could not just easily select the size. I first had to do another sort. I first had to the way, if you look at Barneys, right, that user flow, that user experience was just not as friendly as that, let's say, what I'm used to by seeing at other organizations. So we need to be looking at data and take a step back and say, look, we have access to analytics. And if the question is, why are people not shopping with us? Well, the first one is how can we create that experience and answer that question, why should people shop at our store versus anywhere else? And then how can we use analytics to deliver that absolutely seamless experience? There's plenty of research, and New York Times had a great article in the past that convenience, it's sort of the convenience economy that we live in, right? For many people, they will overspend, not too much, right? But they will overspend for having that type of convenience. And if organizations are not able to offer that, then we will struggle. Now, if you, as a retailer, choose to compete on price, that's fine, right? But then you need to be very mindful of that. You have very tough competitors like Walmart and others that are competing on price, obviously, and there always will be opportunities to push the price down, especially if the organizations or your competitors are much larger. And they're also investing into digital, right, to make that experience, again, more seamless. So my first recommendation for any organization that is struggling or not doing very well, I'm certainly understanding of where you are and why this might be happening. But to start with, a more basic question is, what business are we in? What business are we really in? And the last one, who are our loyal customers, right? So who are the customers that have the highest customer lifetime value with us, right? Can we determine who that group is and what is so unique about that group of people? How can we certainly continue to grow that segment who is very loyal to us? But then how can we identify those parameters or attributes of our best customers, and then use those parameters and find similar types of customers in the marketplace? That would be my strategy.
So I want to push you more, and I know you came prepared with some advanced use case and takeaways, because again, the purpose of this is to be more interactive, not hide behind the slides, have some Q&A with a thought leader in the space who works with some of the top retailers, but then actually give you some actionable takeaways. So Michael has prepared 3 actionable takeaways in the retail space that we're going to open up here in a little bit after we give an opportunity to ask live questions. But I just want to pick a little bit further on, you mentioned customer lifetime value, because again, the topic of today is, and I didn't mean to bring up bankruptcies and bring the conversation to a negative point, but I think it's something we have to address because everyone in retail is thinking about it. It's hard to avoid an article every week that isn't saying XYZ is going out of business. So when it relates to the customer lifetime value, we talked a little bit about the strategy the organization has. If you're a retailer, like, why would I go there? Why would I spend the extra time to go in a store? Why would I shop online versus another competitive retailer? But I'm really curious as we think about advanced analytics and organizations out there that feel like they're doing enterprise analytics very well. They understand their customer, they're working well with their marketing teams. Customer lifetime value, BigQuery, data lakes, data warehouses, I'm hearing those buzzwords all the time. And in this vertical more than any other vertical, right? CPG, news and media, you have some more, I would say, advanced organizations talking about it, but retail, it's coming up every time. And from my point of view, it's interesting to see some organizations reach out to InfoTrust about, hey, we know you guys do customer lifetime value, can you help us? But when we peel the layers back and some of that strategy interviewing sessions, we start to realize they don't even have the data in place for customer lifetime value. So I would just love for you to maybe share more, as you mentioned, CLV.
Absolutely. So I think it's almost a cliche these days when you say, you have to focus on your right buyers, right, on your ideal customer, the basic principles of marketing. But I think when something is cliche, we tend not to think about it as much, and we often tend not to put it to good use, right? Typical cliche is exercise is good for you. Well, then why so many people choose not to exercise, right? So it's interesting kind of how we think, well, yeah, it's a cliche, everyone should be doing this, but nevertheless, it's actually not happening. All right, so when we talk about customer lifetime value, what we really are saying is that you need to have a segmentation strategy in place, right? Yes, absolutely, we want to service everyone, right, and have many people buying from us. But I would almost say for a minute, right, consider yourself or think about an airline, or think about a hotel, right, all of those organizations, they have tiers of membership, right? Lately, I became a huge fan of those tiers, right? Because I travel so much.
I'm a huge fan of traveling with you when you have those tiers.
You know the perks that you often get, kind of a call out to Marriott, who recently put me in the penthouse suite in San Francisco.
It's not sponsored, once again.
Not sponsored, yes. Right. So again, I think they very much understanding where the money is coming from, right? Obviously traveling quite a bit, and hence they're able to provide more benefits. Now, we are not saying that as a retailer, right, those that spend the most money with you should be treating them. You should be treating some segments worse than other segments. That's not the case. But you need to determine, look, if out of you have two buyers, right? You have Brad and you have Michael. And you know that Brad, for whatever reason, right, might end up buying with your business more than Michael will end up buying. Wouldn't you want to spend more effort, right, going after somebody like Brad? Let's use an example. Brad alluded to the fact that he has 3 kids. So for a company like, let's say, even Jimbori, he might be an ideal customer, and Jimbori should be able to identify somebody like Brad and be able to proactively build a conversation and marketing towards Brad, because they know that he will likely buy more products from them over foreseeable future. On the other hand, I do not have kids, and although I have a nephew and niece, and I might buy products for them, but they're certainly not going to buy probably as many products as Brad will, right? So again, what we are saying is now, as a retailer, the question is, if we know this information, then how should we tweak, how should we change, personalize our marketing in a sense that it makes a lot of sense for Brad as a customer and a lot of sense for Michael as a customer. But if somebody like Jimbori went after me as a potential customer in the same way as they would after Brad, most likely it would actually create more tension, right? I would be most likely saying, guys, you clearly are overspending, right? You don't understand my buying habits, and I'm not going to buy more from you just because I don't need to. So that's what we talk about customer lifetime value. Now, the true definition, certainly, of customer lifetime value is the projection that the business is going to, or that the person, sorry, is going to spend with you before they cease to exist. But again, let me clarify, you do not just want to go after those types of customers, right? The goal is not how to cater to 5% of customers and alienate everyone else. The question is, how can we determine which segment is the high lifetime customer value, medium, and low, and then create different types of advertising or even customer experience towards those groups of people.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. I think you're going to get into even more specific details around those particular topics. And again, give all of you that have joined the webinar today some really actionable items, examples that we'll share out after this that you can then take back to your team and start to put together, all right, are we here? And if we're not here, what are the steps we can put in place to get there sooner than later, especially as holiday quickly approaches? So with that, I'm going to jump over to some questions. This is where your engagement is much appreciated. So let me look over here. All right, we got a couple in here, Michael, so good luck to you.
Sounds good.
First one, how do you think about the quality of data and its impact on marketing? I feel like we've hit on a couple of those items, but maybe quickly summarize, because I want to make sure we have time to get to the takeaways.
Sure. So there is an easy answer and a more complicated answer, as always are. So let's start with an easy answer. I think everyone, again, heard this cliche, garbage in, garbage out. But that's really not the case, and that's where the more complex issue comes in. Right, so when we talk about the quality of data, so first of all, absolutely, the organization needs to have a data governance plan, right? And by governance, we do not just mean that you need to be CCPA compliant, GDPR compliant, and prepared for other regulations. By governance, we mean you have a governance/stewardship in place where there's processes in place to preserve high quality, accurate data within the organization, right? Because if at the end of the month you realize that for 3 weeks out of that month you were not collecting data about customers, you're not just those 3 weeks are affected, but all of your downstream systems are affected, and any type of month-over-month, year-over-year comparison is affected as well. So that's a big issue. And then we do a lot of programs on data governance, so we can share with attendees links to data governance webinars that we've done and other resources. The other one is, we talk about, again, this stereotype of garbage in, garbage out. It's not as easy as saying, well, if data is compromised, we can't do anything without it, right? Even if our data quality is, let's say, 80%, right? So, for example, we know that only 80% of actual transactions show up in Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, right? It still means that that 80% of analytics can be used to accomplish something positive, right? It does not mean that let's put off all of our marketing on hold until we can get to that 100%. No, you work with what you have available to you, and in parallel, you make it better. And that's why I'm not a huge proponent of this, again, cliche garbage in, garbage out, is because it many ways sounds demoralizing. Well, we don't have anything to work with. Of course, you have a lot to work with. You have some data that is accurate, some data that is clean. It's still better than making some kind of gut decision, right? Let's go with this ad versus the other just because I feel better about this one. And that's what we need to do. So think of it as again, parallel. On one hand, whatever we have access to, let's maximize the value of that while we build a case for spending more money on making our data better. Otherwise, if you're not doing anything with the data assets that you have available to you, it will be difficult to make a case for getting $100,000 or $200,000 budget to make your better micro, because the question will be like, what are we going to do with this additional data that we cannot do right now? And simply saying, well, it will be more accurate. Well, how would you quantify data being more accurate, right? Now, putting data to good use and simply building on it gives us the ROI that we need to work with.
We actually, it's funny that you bring up in retail, organizations say they don't have good data or they can't use the data. We just came from working with Chris, our colleague who heads up our CPG vertical, and talk about not having as much data as retail. I would say retail, out of all verticals that we work with, has an enormous amount of data. So from my point of view, where I see it's almost like we have a lot of data, but it's easier to say our data is not good and to avoid it and stick with last click and stick with some of the more nascent ways to look at their marketing than to actually dig in to say, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and find out what we're doing wrong, what we don't understand about our customer. I think that's a scary thing for organizations.
And a lot of times when I hear a point, our data is not very good, we need to fix it. A lot of times, people immediately jump in, well, how would you fix it? My actually response to that is, okay, so let's say your data is clean. What are you going to do with it, right? Yeah. So I want to see the plan of what happens next, right? Because to me, data integration and getting to data quality, it's kind of like price of doing business, right? That's not really an end goal. It is merely a way for us to be able to accomplish our objectives and generate marketing ROI. And that's very, very important, right? Even when we begin working on data integration, the way we do data integration should be guided based on what type of marketing we want to be doing once this step is completed. And look, every organization, certainly I've seen it in my previous jobs, always has an example of a failed integration project, right? It's just kind of something that happens, right? Just like every organization has plenty of examples of projects not being done on time or going over budget. It happens, right? And that's what we need to determine as well. Why do integrations fail, right? What has not worked in the past, and make sure that we apply those lessons learned to data integration, of building those data lakes, building those data warehouses. Just because we know it's important, right, and we need to address it, does not mean that magically our marketing is going to get better once it's done.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know we need to move on to the next section. As a moderator, I need to do a better job, but I want to give you time to these QAs. One action item that I would give all of you, hearing Michael kind of walk through those questions and responses to those, is we come a lot across where we as a new partnership are asking for a data flow. Where's your data coming in at? Where is it going through? What are the different platforms? Make sure you have that documented. I think we're a bit surprised when we ask for that information. It's not documented anywhere. There's so many different isolations in the organization. So one item could be go back to your organization and just put it all out, write it, whether it's visually written out, but like find out where your data is coming in, who's getting your data, who's using your data, has all types of benefits from a compliance standpoint, from a data collection standpoint, and ultimately like being good to your customers and giving them the best experience.
And the exercise that I like to do is if you ever catch yourself looking, for example, in the back of a newspaper, there are often these kind of quizzes, right? When there's this table and here's the entrance, here's the exit, how would you find the way? Right, so think about your customer data the same way, right? So there's a point of collection, let's say your website or your mobile application. Well, great, you collected that information, now it lives in Google Analytics. What happens then? Well, it's integrated with our Google Cloud. Okay, well, how is it integrated? How does that flow of information happen? How does it connect with your CRM data? Does it have a flow back? How does it tie to AdWords data, right? So being able to draw not how the platforms are integrated, right? Because that very often becomes a very complex and very technical architectural chart, but merely how the customer data travels within that organization. It is a very good place to start. And certainly if the company does not have something like this, well, that gives you an idea that maybe the flow of customer data is not what you might think it is.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So I'm going to push you. I'm going to hand this over to
Sure.
you. For those of you who have zoomed in on myself and Michael, lucky you, but now it's probably time to switch over to the slides where Michael's going to walk through some actionable items, and I challenge you 2 to 3 minutes per slide so we can have some time for questions.
Absolutely. So the first one to call out is within Google Analytics and hence the eCommerce suite of reports, there are a lot of very actionable reports that I highly advise organizations to get access to if it's not already implemented or implementing enhanced e-commerce to be able to view, for example, a report like this where you can actually see all the product names, you can see product categories, you can see how individual products are performing, what products might be added to the shopping cart, and what products can be removed from the shopping cart, right? What products are added together. And because then it gives you, again, valuable information on what you can be doing differently or better. Another slide where you're able to see how different promotions, or on this slide, how different coupons are performing, right? Being able to test coupons is very, very valuable, right? Sometimes we kind of throw this out, 25% off, but have we tested in what cases $25 off might make more sense than 25% off, right? What type of promo code will actually generate more revenue for our business? I'm always surprised, but with many organizations, when we ask, you have over the past months, we've seen 15 different promotions taking place, how those were decided, right? A lot of times the answer is not tied to data, right? The answer is, well, we thought this would be a good idea for us to try, or it kind of works for us. But this is a great ability to test, right? Which types of discounts, coupons actually work for your business. And one of my favorite type of report is when we look at the checkout funnel within Google Analytics, then being able to immediately create a segment and share that segment with AdWords or display and video, and be able to retarget people. And retargeting is a lot of times, I think companies do it wrong by either overspending amount of money or doing too much remarketing, or a lot of times I personally get remarketed after the purchase already took place. Right? So that's certainly something that you want to fix. And again, it has to do with your customer data flow, because clearly that event of a completed transaction somehow does not reach your remarketing platform or remarketing strategy, and you continue to target people that already purchased this product with images of that product. Something, again, that I see quite often. The other one, attribution modeling. So within Google Analytics 360, a very good suite of reports where we can see this type of overlay, how different channels work together in generating a conversion. And one of the things that I love about attribution within Google Analytics 360 is the ability to customize it. So here you can see we can include or not include impression data, click data, direct data. Additionally, we can change the loopback window. So we can look at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or we can even compare a different, skip this, we can look at the path to purchase, how again, different campaigns have worked together to generate a conversion, or compare different models. And this, based on my experience of speaking about this topic, quite often the question that is very often on the minds of people is, well, can you tell us which attribution is the right one? And I wish I could, but there is really no right one. Certainly, let's get beyond that last click attribution model, but it still has place in our lives, right? It's just not all of our attribution should be done using last click, which certainly has many of limitations, but there are different models, first click, last click, time decay model, right? Linear is our ability to compare how those different models actually work and ability to build our own model. So that's the very important one. And again, it goes to something that Brad, you and I discussed at the beginning, is our ability to form a hypothesis and test it, right? So we might say, look, we need to figure out right now the impact of, let's say, these types of impressions or display ads on our conversions, right? So can we compare a couple of models to form a hypothesis? That's how I would start this conversation, not, is last click going to give us the answer to that? There is no single model that will address all of your attribution needs, but your ability to construct different models and interpret the differences is what actually is going to make you successful.
Just to add to that, I think that's one area that we've seen just increase a lot in the past year is these magical solutions that you use their UI, use their tool, and they'll bring everything together at once. And I think where we see best in class is organizations that are using multiple attribution models, creating those hypotheses, and then testing that to actually drive impact. So that's a big point that comes up with us. It's like, hey, do you have an attribution model that can do this, this, and this? And our team, our data scientists, our data engineers would say, like, look, it's not just one thing. It's understanding your CRM data. It's understanding your analytics data, your marketing data, all your different silos of information, bringing that together, using the best of Analytics 360, data lake sitting in BigQuery, and connecting the dots to make a more effective marketing spend.
And I think we kind of need to tackle this sort of elephant in the room where people say, but this is not perfect, or we need a solution that will do all of this together, or what we have just does not account for 100% of touch points or 100% of interactions. Look, if we did not have customers, the data would have been much cleaner. But it's not the case, right? And think about the last time you made a purchase, whether you went to Target.com to buy a chair, or you went to Amazon to buy peanut butter, whatever that might be, right? Our decision and our path to purchase is a lot of times quite convoluted, especially if the purchase is expensive, right? If you're thinking about buying a chair, well, you might go to the website on a mobile device because you just had that idea and you had a few minutes to do so, or you might make the decision then, well, I want to share this product with my family, with my wife, get her perspective, and then you continue browsing the products together at home, and then you decide, well, let's maybe add this to the shopping cart and wait, maybe we will get a discount down the road, right? So all of those touch points are very difficult to account for, and we just have to be very mindful that they exist and their customer behavior, can be predictable to a certain extent, but a lot of times, again, there are things that are unknown, and we have to be comfortable managing it and form hypothesis knowing that this is very much the case. And last topic that we had today was around data integration. We are not going to cover all the slides because I think this was great that we were actually able to focus on questions. But if we focus on data integration, besides just giving us an ability to have access to raw data, in this case, kind integrating Google Analytics data with BigQuery or bringing additional data into BigQuery, it gives us ability to choose which platform is right for what type of analysis. A lot of times we hear, well, we want everything in the cloud, we do not want to be using analytics. That might be the case for certain things that you are working on, but if you have marketers who are not data scientists, you either then will need to buy a data visualization platform, or you will need to say, look, some reports should be done within Google Analytics, right? Just because it does the job so well for so many use cases, and some information will need to be available within Google BigQuery and within, let's say, Tableau or Looker that sits on top of Google BigQuery. So there are different solutions for different things that we want to accomplish, right? And that's what we want to be very mindful of. So far, we really have not found this is one product that will make you as a retailer, whether omnichannel or pure play online, successful. It's just our ability to make the decision which platform is right for which use case, and our ability to be customer-centric in our thought process, right? How do we make the experience for our customers more seamless, more convenient? And then when we do so, how analytics can help us identify those points of friction that might not be, that we might be able to address.
Thank you, Michael. So I know we're at time. I first wanted to say thank you to the 100+ audience that was able to join us today. Sorry about the palm tree falling early on, but we hope you enjoyed more of an interactive webinar experience where we wanted to make it more about the audience and make it that hour where you can dedicate and learn more about your space and ways that you can push your organization. So if I have to just quickly summarize, is number one, understand where you're at in that maturity analytics framework. Be honest with yourself. But as Michael mentioned, it's more important to know where you're going. It's less important to know where you are now, but where do you want to be? And make sure you bring in the right teams to do that. So understand your people and your process. Number two is to have that competitive advantage. Make sure you're thinking advanced analytics. Don't settle for, hey, I can't figure that out, or our data is not good. Make sure you're thinking about things like customer lifetime value and utilizing BigQuery that connects with Analytics 360. Like, push your organization and push yourselves to have that competitive advantage. I don't say number three, just know why. One of the big takeaways is like, why are people going to go to your retail store, whether it's online or offline? And make sure what that powerful thing is, you're communicating it in an effective and efficient way. So thank you for your time. We will send out the follow-up slides. We really appreciate you joining our 3-part webinar series. And we got news and media next. So we'll send out some more resources, but thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody, for joining, and let's go win holiday season. Thank you.
Bye.